David, you know, when we talk about what is shaping this GOP presidential primary, there are so many things to choose from. You can talk about the civil case. You can talk about the federal case, DOJ's case. You can talk about what happened on January 6th, absent those actual legal challenges. I wonder, these 14th Amendment challenges, these two specific legal cases, your sense of the way in which they are or aren't shaping the GOP primary field. And by that, I mean, maybe they're not front of mind. Maybe it's not the thing that Nikki Haley is talking about every time she gives a stump speech. But I have to imagine that there are donors, that there are many people who are saying, we have to have a plan B so that if any of these things that are on the horizon percolate, then we have a candidate who is ready to go. That is my sense of the way something like this plays out politically.
That's exactly right, Alicia. Look, I think this is a notable and noble effort using the 14th Amendment to disqualify the former president. I remain a legal skeptic because of investing the finder of fact in a matter for which the president has not been charged criminally. I think all that will get tested in the court. But then how is it playing out in a Republican primary and in a general election? You're exactly right. In a primary, you have Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, and others behind closed doors making the case that what happens if the president ends up disqualified, or what happens if he loses his freedom in the D.C. federal matter, or in Georgia, or in the Mar-a-Lago case. Do we really want to be the party that has to wrestle with that in front of the American people? And can a president win? Can the former president win re-election? That's real behind closed doors. I think for the country, though, what this 14th Amendment case invites us to think about and talk about, as well as Jack Smith's case, Mar-a-Lago, and Georgia, is we likely are, the odds are getting stronger and stronger. We will end up in an environment where Donald Trump has lost his freedom as a result of a criminal conviction somewhere, or now be disqualified because of the 14th Amendment case in Colorado. What does that mean for the national conversation? How does Donald Trump try to ignite his cultural movement to seek retribution and revenge and vengeance? That's a moment we could be heading into, and it could be a very unsafe moment for the nation if we don't rise to the occasion to handle it properly.
Indeed. Michelle, Minnesota's Supreme Court Justice posed this question this week, saying, if the court's justices agree that they have the ability to bar Trump, quote, should we, is the question that concerns me most. I wonder what you think.
Well, it ties to this concern about the way in which the Trump rallies, the January 6th insurrection, the violence that comes up at the rallies, the violence that we see on social media by those who would say that they need to see Trump in office, that the 2020 election was really won by him. I think that there's considerable fear. I think that there's fear that we can see just as a result of the video that we saw capturing what happened on January 6th. If this were any other place, any other country, you'd have American members of Congress saying we need to send in teams to help that democracy be restored. And yet that was here in the United States. It was actually the first time that the Confederate flag made its way to the United States Capitol. And it's something that we shouldn't take lightly. And Colorado is not the only state, as you mentioned, with Minnesota, this being considered as well, where there are these 14th Amendment challenges that may mean that Donald Trump is not on the ballot in those states.